The media is definitely under fire right now. The FCC is ratcheting up the situation. Brendan Carr actually spoke out about this week on Fox, and it was amazing because it was literally The View that they were talking about. And what have I been telling you guys over and over and over again? I mean, I realized Colbert got kicked to the curb, but that was kind of expected. I mean, you got a combo effect going on. You've got a combination of the media landscape changing, right? A lot of people are coming over to here, YouTube, because, well, there's a little more authenticity. There's less management structure, a little less people in the way saying you can say this, you can't say that, etc. Believe me, I know. I've been there. I've worked at all the networks. This is the first time in my career I don't have to use a prompter. How great is that, right? I mean, they made you use one. Literally, like I'd have to get my commentaries signed off on every night. Kid you not, it was really annoying. Anyway, especially like when they would decide 5 minutes before air that they didn't like something, that was really, really annoying. Brendan Carr went on to Fox, where, yeah, they check your commentaries, and spoke out about this, specifically about The View. Because you see, the White House had tweeted or put on social media, what do we call it now? You know, when you put something up on X, I guess you posted. You posted. They have been posting about The View over the weekend, saying what a rotten show it was and how its days were numbered. And the fact that you've got now the FCC chair, Brendan, weighing in on this, he's the one that controls the airwaves because he controls whether or not the affiliates can have their license, right, to operate as an ABC affiliate. That comes straight from the FCC. All of this is in danger right now. The president saying it even over the weekend on True Social that, you know what, we control these licenses. Don't forget who's in control of the licenses. So, you know, you guys better shape up. Just give 50-50. 50-50. It's not like we're asking for, you know, bias towards the president, but can you be a little bit more fair? Have you heard of that? Here's Brendan.
Let's go to The View, shall we? Joy Behar yesterday said this.
First of all, who tried to overthrow the government on January 6th?
Wait, let me think. Who
was that again? That was not Obama. The thing about him is that he's so jealous of Obama because Obama is everything that he is not. Trim. Smart, handsome,
happily
married, and can sing Al Green's song, Let's Stay Together, better than Al Green. And Trump cannot stand it. It's driving him crazy. Jealousy is not green is not a good color.
That from yesterday. Who knows what happens today? The White House chose to respond to that. And this is what they said. Joy Behar is an irrelevant loser suffering from a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. It's no surprise that The View's ratings hit an all-time low last year. She should self-reflect on her own jealousy of President Trump's historic popularity before her show is the next to be pulled off air, end quote. Is The View now in the crosshairs of this administration?
Look, it's entirely possible that there's issues over there. I mean, again, stepping back, this broader dynamic, once President Trump has exposed these media gatekeepers and smashed this facade, there's a lot of consequences. I think the consequences of that aren't quite finished. And look, The View's got a lot of challenges there. It wasn't that long ago, I think one episode, one show alone, they had to stop, interrupt the show, and read 4 separate legal notices to try to avoid legal liability. So I'm not surprised to hear people saying that their ratings are struggling.
Wow. Sir, where does this end then?
Look, I think we need a course correction. You know, it's time for America's legacy broadcasters to return to promoting the public interest. And just recently, Skydance, which is looking to acquire CBS, wrote letters to the FCC committing to serious change, to trying to root out bias, to putting in place an ombudsman that would address these issues, to returning to unbiased, trustworthy journalism. That's where we have to go. And I think we're getting some wins along the way. It's trust but verify at the end of the day. You know, we're not where we need to go. But I think this legacy media really needs to reorient, or they're going to continue to run into issues like Colbert, where it just doesn't make economic sense to run a partisan circus.
Yeah, and that's what it was, right? A partisan circus. Oh, there was this great little moment that came out online yesterday. Apparently, they were going to have a protest at CBS and Paramount in defense of Stephen Colbert and his show, and like 12 people showed up. So I guess he really isn't as popular as he thinks. I mean, he's got a whole bunch of problems, and that show really suffered from its inability, shall we say, to keep up with the times. I mean, for example, I'll give you a little example, right? If I wanted to use a Stephen Colbert clip here on the Trish Regan show over here on YouTube, I couldn't. You know why? I'd get hit with a copyright strike because Colbert and CBS and Paramount would say, we don't want you using that. And you couldn't argue fair use or anything. And so that was a problem in that when you think about the new media world in which we live, a lot of things are seen in clips and a lot of people respond to things in clips. And so if you don't get to see that little clip on Twitter or on YouTube or anywhere, X, forgive me, well, then you're kind of not part of the conversation. And that's in part what happened to Stephen Colbert. The other thing is just the reality of they clearly didn't run a very tight ship. Clearly they were paying him a little too much, right? If they're losing $30-40 million a year, you can't sustain that. I mean, it's wild. They actually want Letitia James to fight for them. The Writers Guild has come out and said, but it should still air because it's so important to the brand, to CBS. Who the heck cares about the brand when you're losing $30-40 million a year? You guys have bigger problems, okay? But part of that was sure. Okay, maybe advertisers didn't want to advertise on that particular show because it had gotten so toxic, if you would. I mean, he had only one thing he could talk about, and it was politics. And his politics were really, really aggressive. But simultaneously, they were just not running a very good ship. And so the same concern actually is plaguing The View right now. I mean, we know about the View's bias. For goodness sakes, it was Hillary Clinton that promoted her lies on The View nonstop, remember?
There is no denying that the Russians interfered in the election. Right. Whether or not they had willing or unwitting help from the Trump team, they interfered. And they did so to help him and hurt me. And they did so to destabilize our democracy. And they have not stopped. I mean, there's been enough public testimony before Congress now by very distinguished, experienced intelligence professionals who all say the same thing. This is a clear and present danger to our country. Yeah. And I think it's important. And I would say this.
Yeah, Hillary. We know what you guys were doing now. We know all about it. I mean, we kind of knew before, but now it's been cemented and verified by Tulsi Gabbard's documentation release. So you guys don't really have a whole lot of places to go. I mean, that's why Peter Strzok, I suppose, is taking down all his tweets. I suppose that's why Brennan said he was lawyering up in a big way because, the media was just constantly doing more and more of this. I mean, CNN caught in the same position. This guy, he's no longer there. Joy Behar's no longer over at MSNBC. You get a lot of people, I think, that have left the mainstream media because they were so toxic. Maybe Colbert was to a certain extent part of that. Whoopi certainly is. Joy Behar certainly is. Sunny Houston certainly is. So Bob Iger has a little problem there on his hands. But, CNN knew what to do with this one.
Maybe the biggest lie of all, repeatedly and with no facts to back him up, making the outrageous claim that the so-called deep state spied on his campaign. He did it again today.
But I hope it's not true, but it looks like it is.
It's not true. It's a lie.
Did the intelligence community spy on President Trump and his campaign?
No, we did not.
This is not just an angry president popping off. This is a deliberate and coordinated effort to save his presidency, to cast doubt on the Russia investigation by repeating a lie, repeating it every chance he gets. And that repetition is a key part of the strategy here, because if you hear him say the same thing over and over and over, it gets into your head. You may even start to wonder if there's some truth to it.
This concerning new report accusing President Obama's CIA of curating the 2016 Russia collusion hoax by asking foreign intelligence agencies to illegally spy on the Trump campaign.
Yep.
John Brennan had identified 26 Trump associates for the Five Eyes to target. A source confirmed that the IC had identified them as people to bump or
you guys,
contact.
it's unbelievable, right? And everything that Tulsi has reported, and we can get into that in greater depth today, but everything that she has reported shows that this was very much a coordinated move. Joy Behar earlier talking about how Trump has a fragile ego. I'm kind of thinking that it's Obama who had the fragile ego. Obama could not take the idea that after 8 years of his tremendous legacy and all that he was able to get accomplished, suddenly Donald Trump was waltzing into the place. And, in his eyes, or his view, was going to stink up the joint. Well, guess what? Donald Trump got in there because of Obama, because people had it. They had had it under 8 years of Democrat rule. They were sick and tired of it. And they said, you know, we're ready for a change. We're going to roll the dice on this guy. What do you know? And Obama was so upset by that December 8th of 2000, I guess it would be 15, right? It's 2016, forgive me, 2016, December 8th, he held a meeting in his office. He had all the bigwigs there. And he said, guess what? We're going to unleash the intelligence community to follow this narrative, even though they knew the narrative wasn't true, even though they already had reports from the FBI and the DNI saying this is not true, that Russia had no effect on the election. And yet they came forward with like lie after lie after lie, and we had to sit there and we had to listen to it on every single network from every single Democrat. This was Obama's excuse for why he wasn't able to hand the reins over to Hillary Clinton. It was Hillary Clinton's excuse. It was the Democrats' constant excuse, and it was gross. Watch.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
I have an objection.
I object to the 15 votes from the state of North Carolina. I object because people are horrified.
He's an illegitimate president.
Do you believe Trump is a legitimate president?
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by
unbelievable. I mean,
interference.
you know, we could watch that all day. I think there's a 10-minute long clip on the internet of all of these people saying the exact same thing. And they just figured, you know, if we just repeat this story enough, maybe it'll sink in. That was the intention anyway. And they had the mainstream media willing to carry their water for them. I mean, they would just call up the New York Times or the Washington Post, and what do you know? Sources say, nonstop. So they really cultivated that media relationship. And now, Brandon Carr, Donald Trump, they're out there ready, willing, and able to break it. Break it not because you need one side or another, right? Let me be very clear on that. We need our freedom of speech. But you can't have 99% negative on one candidate and 99% positive on the other candidate. Something's kind of off at that point. When you do not have a diversity of viewpoints around the table or in your newsroom, you're going to have some problems. And this is what Brendan Carr noticed. This is what he's onto. This is what Donald Trump, frankly, was able to cut through in a rather miraculous way when you think about it. Let's watch Brendan explain this here on Newsmax. You know, another one of those alternatives.
Yeah, something really significant is happening right here. And it goes back to President Trump. When he ran for office again, he ran directly at these legacy national broadcasters. And for years, people cowed down to the executives behind these companies based in Hollywood, in New York. And they just accepted that these national broadcasters could dictate how people think about topics, that they could set the narrative for the country. And President Trump fundamentally rejected it. He smashed the facade that these are gatekeepers that can determine what people think. And everything that we're seeing right now flows from that decision by President Trump, and he's winning. I mean, look, PBS has been defunded. NPR has been defunded. CBS is committing to restoring fact-based journalism. And you see it, you know, everything from, you know, Joy Reid is gone at MSNBC. All these things aren't isolated pinpricks. They go back to this emperor has no clothes moment where President Trump stood up to these legacy media gatekeepers, and now their business models are falling apart.
And that's it. Okay, pretty simple. I mean, it was good timing for him. I don't know if he could have done it. If you think about it 30 years ago, he came along at the right time. It's kind of like I look at YouTube and I'm like, gosh, I wish I had done this 20 years ago. I wish I had done this 10 years ago. I mean, better late than never, right, guys? Reminder, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. We're on our way to 1 million subs. Really, really big deal. And this show has most consistently been in the top 100 YouTube podcasts. So I thank you for all of that, for all that support. But it shows that there's a hunger and a need for something different. And I'll tell you, the media, they're not going to be let off the hook with this one. They're just not. And here's what it's going to come down to. The FCC has the power to revoke broadcast licenses. You think about ABC, CBS, NBC. This is why NBC is in part splitting off Comcast, right? Saying, okay, NBC, you're going to do your thing. You're going to be part of the parent company. We want you. MSNBC and all you cable companies, you're going to go do something else. There's some economic reasons for that, but there may be some political reasons too, because again, they don't need the headache, right? There's only one way. Their way or the highway the entire time. Joy Reid, she went bye-bye. Maybe a few more will. Maybe Rachel Maddow. I don't know. She gets good ratings. Maybe Jen Psaki. She doesn't. Or maybe you fill yourself up on the Jen Psakis, the no-names of the world. Remember Little Peppermint Patty? You get a few more of those, you pay them very little money, and then you at least keep the lights on because it's a dying business, right? So at some point it goes. In terms of the actual big networks, well, the FCC has quite a bit of power because you see they control the licenses that are given out to ABC, NBC, and CBS. And as The View goes on hiatus, one has to wonder if there's some negotiation going on behind the scenes. I mean, Bob Iger already told them this is the CEO of Disney, who spoke to the guy who's the president of ABC News, who spoke to the executive producer on the show. They all sat them down and said, hey guys, can we do some other stories? Do you have some entertainment stories you might want to do? No. They want to stick with politics all day long, and they think that that's actually what's working. And they point to their ratings and they're like, look, we're not getting killed. Okay, well, you're not doing as well as you were. Let's be very clear. You may not be getting killed, but the advertisers aren't happy because you guys have become toxic. So the FCC licenses all stations all around the country, right? They don't license ABC News directly, ABC directly, but they give the licenses out to all the different ABC stations. ABC itself only owns about 7 of them. Right? Like they call them O&Owns, owned and operated. And so most of these are not owned by the network. And so if it's not considered to be in the public interest, guess what? Brendan Carr and the FCC, Donald Trump's FCC, can just take away that license because you have to be meeting your public interest obligations. Otherwise, your license can be challenged, limited, or revoked. And that's where ABC finds itself right now. I mean, Carr has been all over them for a while. He's talked about their conduct. He actually pointed to the $16 million in a letter to Bob Iger that they had to pay out, pointing to the fact that, hey, the fact that you guys had to settle this lawsuit, that's actually proof in and of itself that your bias was so extraordinary. That's because of Georgie Poo. Remember George Stephanopoulos, who's somehow still on the morning show, even though he keeps threatening to walk? I think they're going to get rid of him. My 2 cents of it. Anyway, so they had to settle that one because of the defamation case over there, which again causes the public to not trust them as much. And so he has voiced this concern. He did say, Carr wrote in a letter to Iger, quote, my understanding is that ABC is attempting to extract onerous financial and operational concessions from local broadcast TV stations under the threat of terminating long-held affiliations, which could result in blackouts and other harms to local consumers of broadcast news and content. So now he's taking the side of the affiliates. He's like, what the heck are you doing, ABC? You're forcing them to take all that awful content from Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar? I don't think so. They really shouldn't have to pay that much for that. Frankly, it should be like the inverse. Like the network should be paying the affiliates to have to carry that garbage, right? He also raised the concern about some of the remaining available streaming services that, this is where it gets a little murky and a little wonky, but, basically saying that, again, they're charging them too much for some of these deals. But this is the big thing that he pointed out. And I want to keep going back to this because this is something important. I highlighted it in the letter. Quote, the fact that a massive trust divide has emerged between local news outlets and national programmers like ABC only increases the importance, he said, of retransmission consent revenues remaining available for local broadcast TV stations to invest in their local news operations and the content that serves their communities. In other words, what he's telling them is forget The View. These little stations shouldn't have to pay to have that garbage on television. They should be able to do their own version of The View and have a local view. And hey, wouldn't that be more entertaining to watch than Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and Sonny and the rest of them all day long? So that's a big, big, big deal. And I'm telling you, it's not just the issue of their sort of nauseating misinformation and the lack of diversity of opinion, it's also this DEI thing that was going on. So he's discovered a lot of interesting information on the DEI front, and now he's going to the networks and saying, well, wait, what were you doing here? What were you doing with these DEI initiatives? I just want to show you what he told CNBC. This is about 8 weeks ago or so, and this is another thing that puts ABC, if you would, in the crosshairs.
Another issue that you've gone after is the DEI policies, specifically a really sharply worded note to Bob Iger on Disney. What is the status of those investigations, and how are you even going about doing them?
Yeah, the first thing we did, basically day one after President Trump came in, he issued an executive order to end the federal government's promotion of DEI. We did that at the FCC. I mean, you'd be shocked. We were spending millions and millions of dollars at the FCC promoting DEI. In fact, it was listed as the agency's #2 budget priority and strategic priority. We've ended that to focus on our core mission. We've told everybody that's trying to do deals before the FCC that they need to end their own promotion of invidious forms of DEI. Disney and ABC in particular are ones that I'm very concerned about. The preliminary data indicates that they look like they were doing intentional discrimination, potentially along race and gender. And if that's true, that's a really big deal. And so we're looking at that at the FCC.
And what sort of consequences would you be looking at that?
Well, again, it's the full suite of consequences that the FCC could potentially have. So we're going to look at that. But again, the media stuff gets a lot of attention, particularly by the media because it involves the media. But our traditional economic agenda is what we're really pushing hard on as well. And that's the deregulation effort. Look, we've got to get more spectrum out there. If you remember the first Trump administration, we got tons of airwaves out there. It helped bolster our leadership in 5G. During the Biden years, we really fell behind. So right now, we have to get at least 600 megahertz of spectrum out there. Particularly when we look at AI, that's loading tons of new data onto our networks. We need more spectrum to carry that capacity. That's one of the most important things we're doing.
Okay, but not done with the Disney thing. One more question.
They're a little worried. They're a little worried, yeah, at all the networks right about now. ABC most especially. ABC most especially. They have very, very good reason to worry because of some of the things that they did, right? Molly Hemingway broke this down beautifully on Fox yesterday. I want to show you this soundbite just because it's so succinct and it's so good. And she sort of sums up the media's entire problem that, you know, they don't seem to understand over at CNN and some of these other places. Here she is.
What happened when you go back to 2016 is the Obama administration hid intelligence showing that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election was no big deal. They suppressed that because they didn't want Donald Trump to know about it. Then they immediately began leaking to the Washington Post and to the New York Times false things that weren't true, the opposite, that Russia had conspired with Trump to steal the election. And the Washington Post and New York Times, when they were asked to publish these things that were not true, they just went ahead and did it. They took the word of John Brennan and other sources like that who had made these false claims. Then the Obama administration manufactures a completely fake intelligence assessment, again with this claim that Russia had conspired with Trump to steal the election, and they leaked that to the media as well. Well, when they were receiving these leaks, the media did whatever these people wanted. They pushed this absolutely delusional conspiracy theory for years. And now that we know that, and it was a fake story, now that we know the real story, and the real story is shocking. The Obama administration suppressed real intelligence, and then they manufactured fake intelligence for the purpose of undermining a legitimately elected administration. The media are hiding it. And why? Because they were complicit in the crimes that were committed. They can't very well report what actually happened because the whole conspiracy would have gone nowhere if the media hadn't been so willing to just republish these lies from Obama officials.
Okay, bump to bump. All right, well said, Molly. So that's part of the big problem. So they're not reporting on a lot of the stuff that they ought to be reporting on, including what the CIA is saying right about now, including what Tulsi Gabbard is saying. They're trying to, what are they going to tell this? Those are lies too, even though all the documentation came out. It's kind of amazing. Well, it's because they're freaking out. They're actually really and truly freaking out because they know that they're the ones in trouble now. Just like Peter Strzok is freaking out and he's deleted all of his tweets from X. You've got Brennan lawyering up. You've got Comey. You know, he was freaking out all along. Everybody's freaking out, sure, including the media. And they're going to try and tell you, oh, it's big bad Trump. Guys, look in the mirror. For goodness sakes. I mean, this guy really doesn't want to look in the mirror that often. I'm sorry. But at least he's not hosting a show anymore. Another amazing thing, like nobody knows how to pick talent. I'm not saying you have to be like Mr. Universe or anything, but this one has a special look.
And to the broader point, Brian, the Wall Street Journal is just one of many news organizations that Trump has been trying to sue. Over the weekend, President Trump also threatened TV licenses as well, posting this on Truth Social, saying that he wants some licenses, unclear exactly which ones, to be revoked, calling the networks political pawns for Democrats. This isn't the first time that Trump has talked about doing this. Why is this threat different? Is it possible for some kind of licensing to be revoked?
Well, I think it hits differently now because of the recent Paramount settlement and the back and forth between the owners of CBS, recently resulting in the merger being approved by Trump's FCC. So here's the boring basic thing about licenses. Normally, they're nonpartisan. They're just renewed almost with a rubber stamp every 8 years. The FCC is the agency that does this. Again, normally kind of a rather mundane exercise, not very newsworthy. But Trump is trying to make it newsworthy by threatening some of these stations. By the way, networks are not licensed nationally, only broadcast stations. And channels like this one, CNN, are not licensed at all. It's really only local broadcast stations. Now, we know that President Trump has already successfully defunded PBS and NPR, those local stations across the country. So we see that he is continuing to try to tighten his grip on the American news media with some success to some degree. I've been speaking with scholars who studied Viktor Orban's attempts to do this in Hungary. Hungary is a country where we've seen real democratic backsliding in the past decade, a real sense of growing autocracy there. Here's what one of those scholars said to me. He was comparing what Orban did in Hungary to what Trump is trying to do in the U.S. Gabor Shiring saying to me, Orban's media takeover began with public broadcasting. The next step was the takeover and the muzzling of independent media. Orban achieved this through financial and legal means, a system of autocratic carrots and sticks. So on the one hand, you encourage your friends in the press, you give them favored treatment. On the other hand, you use sticks against the ones that you want to punish.
Yeah, okay.
With these posts on Truth Social over the weekend, Trump is giving examples of the sticks, right? He's threatening licenses in a vague way.
That poor guy. Anyway, you can tell yourself whatever you want. I'd actually say Obama had wonderful control over the media for 8 years. Oh, for longer than 8 years, actually, for 16 years, because clearly he still has some influence. I mean, think about them trying to put up Joe Biden, poor Joe Biden, who was just a mess. And anybody that dared to even ever question Joe Biden and his mental acuity, you're in trouble. How dare you? How dare you?